Welcome to Friends and Neighbors. I am Sandra O'Neill, and I am so delighted. This is such a special program. We're going to be talking all about marriage. So we are here with my fabulous co-host, Sherry Tatum, of course, and our Uber drivers, Roy and Eddie.
And they're the best Uber drivers you have ever seen.
Yes.
And they don't charge anything.
They don't charge.
They pay the bill.
Greater love hath no husband.
Yeah, than to be the
Uber driver.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my goodness, but we are going to be talking about marriage during this episode, and we thought it would be really neat to bring our husbands in to just kind of share our perspectives. Errol and I have been married going now on 20 years, and I cannot believe it's been that long.
Yeah.
And Sherry and Roy, y'all are
nearly 28 years.
Nearly 28 years. So I want to hear some wisdom from y'all.
Are you kidding?
Some wisdom.
Some wisdom.
Marriage
You
wisdom.
still got wisdom, right?
The great thing is don't have 15 children.
Yeah, that's the wisdom of it. Yeah.
For the number of children that we have and great grandchildren.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's interesting though when you start out. We were limited. But things got greater as the kids got older.
Yeah, as everyone got older.
Everyone got older,
problems.
and then had their problems.
But you know what? Growing older together
Yeah.
makes it sweeter.
Yes.
And over the years, I have learned to love. I loved them when we got married, but the respect I have for him now makes me love him more so. My respect for him is immense, honestly. He's the most wonderful husband a woman could ever be blessed with. A mate. He's my soul mate, and that is the truth.
You're talking about me?
Yes, I think I have. Yes, and he has been, I think, such a role model for my children and my grandchildren. Well, it's ours, we say ours, and our great-grandchildren. Between us, we have 4 that are alive. We have Chase that's in heaven. He passed away when he was 34. And then we have 9 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And so all of these kids have had kids, and the kids are having kids. So you better be in love, and you better love that person enough to stay with it.
About our journey too. Errol, I always say, Errol, you're my best friend. You know, he still likes me.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm grateful.
Yes.
The one thing I share too, as far as the wisdom that I've gained in marriages, is Jesus. That's the wisdom I've gained.
Yes.
You know, before I met her, the love of my life, I didn't have the true love in Jesus, and then Jesus came into my life. So I just want to speak to someone out there who knows this, who does not know this. He can be the rock for you, as you try to be the rock for your spouse. So please, I just take this opportunity to tell you, if there's a person out there who is in marriage that needs that message, just know that Jesus can be the rock for you. The only thing else I share is from the Word, because it can only speak more than I can ever say. And I looked at Proverbs, and it just stared me in the eye. And this is what I believe in Sandra, my wife. A wise woman builds her home.
Yes.
But a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. Now, don't you know, Roy, home is where the heart is.
Home is where the heart is.
Where you go out, you work, and the thoughts and the busyness and the stresses that occur, and then you come home to a home that a wise woman has built. And that's been, to us, probably the most precious thing I can have in a wife and a spouse.
Amen.
You know, a good thing is when you come home from work too, is that you have a woman there who loves you.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can have is when you come home, you know, there's just a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And there's not much love.
Yeah.
And a lot of that goes on, and I think people don't realize it. There's stress on both levels. There's stress for a woman at home with her children.
Yes.
There's stress on us when we work. And if you can put those two together, and you can be friends. A guy once told me, he said, do you like your wife? I said, well, yeah. He said, no, do you like your wife?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I do. He said, now, do you love your wife? I said, yeah. He said, you got to like her first before you love her. And I thought, that was an interesting concept, but the more I thought about it, I thought, you know, that's true. You better like who you marry.
Yeah.
Because the love will come with that. And that's what it's done with us. I mean, you know, we just kind of met on the run, didn't we, at Mount Perrin?
At Mount Perrin, yes.
Do you remember
we
a
did.
time that you realized God spoke to you, said,
she's the one?
I knew, I got to go, I knew I would marry him that night.
You knew it, right?
At Mount Perino. He and I had done several movies together and commercials, but I had not seen Roy in 5 years. And when I saw him that night, because everyone loved Roy. Everyone spoke highly of Roy. Oh, Roy this, Roy that. You know, he was so wonderful. And but I asked him where had he been for 5 years. You know, you just make casual conversation. I never dreamed that he would marry me. I never dreamed that I would end up being his wife. And God knows. I am so thankful that God gave me Roy Tatum for my husband. He is a man among men as far as I'm concerned because he loves Jesus Christ and he lives it, he talks it, he walks it, he lives it with me and in front of all of our children.
That's so precious.
Well, see, that's a mutual thing. You know that old song about a mutual admiration society. Is that
they may not know that.
They may not. That's true. We're older.
Yeah, we're older.
Might not have happened.
Yeah.
But that we love each other mutually.
Yeah.
There's, we, have zipped in there together as husband and wife, and so I don't know how else to put it except that,
I love that. I love how God just knows when is the perfect timing to bring His chosen people together to do this crazy life that we do.
And I bring it real quick, that crazy moment. I just share this because I teach this to my Sunday school kids. This is the Holy Spirit I teach to them. It's the signal I give them. They always love that. Even Eliana today, my daughter, said, it's the signal. And so it was a signal that God gave us that we were obedient. And she says, what does that mean? I asked her, it's when you're obedient to God. So I'm just grateful for that. God gave me the signal to be obedient to marry her.
Well, you know what?
20 years
Coming
ago.
up after this break, we're going to be bringing in Darryl and Charlotte Baker, and they have a lot to talk about marriage. They're going to talk about the passion behind it, being with your best friend, and so much more. So you all will need to come back and get to meet our guests. And I want to say thanks, hubbies, for being here with us. Our Ubers. Our Ubers. We'll see you shortly, right after this break.
Amen.
Welcome back to Friends and Neighbors, and we are sitting here with, may I say pastors? Pastors Darryl and Charlotte Baker. You all are over your marriage ministry at your home church.
Yes.
That's correct.
Here in Dunwoody, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure being here.
You met our husbands earlier.
Our Ubers.
Our Ubers. That's what they said, like, we just drive you all around, don't we?
They're sitting over here listening to every word.
It's true.
There's a special calling.
It is.
I'm so grateful to have you guys here because we really want to dive into just the concept of marriage. And, as you start growing as a person, your marriage also has to evolve and grow. So I want to, first of all, hear about your marriage, how you all met, and then how God also led you to write your marriage manual.
Well,
You want to start?
Yes, I can. We actually were working at the same company. We're from Chicago originally.
Okay.
We're working at the same company. He had been there. I had been there a long time, probably 10 years. He had been there about 2, and then he noticed me. This is what he's going to tell you. He noticed me. Although we had been seeing each other, he noticed me, and so from that point on, it just kind of evolved in that one day he happened to attend the church that I was a member of at the time. And he didn't know that. And then this is how he did it. He sent me an email, which is so cute. He sent me an email and said, I really enjoyed your pastor. At the time they did tapes. He said, can you buy me a tape? And by the way, can we go on a date? Literally.
Rhyming words.
Yes. And that's how it happened. I mean, he even said, if you want to bring a chaperone or someone, since you don't really know me, I said, no, I think I'm grown enough to do this. And then from then on, really, it's history. I mean, we went on a date, and that was it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, how long?
Roy and I were first date, and that was it.
Yeah.
No more. No, I
more.
didn't date anyone else, and he didn't either.
Oh.
We knew.
Well, you knew
it.
Once
Yeah.
you know, you know.
Yes.
How long have y'all been married?
19 years.
Oh, awesome.
Good for you. Amen. Children? You have children?
We have one daughter, she's 16.
All right. Very, very, very good. Well, tell me about your manual. I want to know because...
Wait, we need to have this manual like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're good.
Yeah.
No, we're good. I just thought it would be really nice, like as a single
Right.
person, you're like,
Right.
no,
Oh, wait.
no.
Yeah, you're not... Oh, wait. Uh-huh. So what advice do you have in there?
Well, let's clarify. The manual is actually for churches. So if you have a church, that's typically what it's for. If they want to have people they can identify to help counsel people in their church.
Yep.
Because sometimes, you know, there are couples that need help, right?
Yep.
And sometimes there's no structure there.
Right.
So God impressed us to create something because we were doing it even before we were officially pastors.
Gotcha.
And we wanted to document what we were doing. And so it just became this huge manual that churches can use, basically.
That's wonderful because you are serving and working at your church.
Yes.
So definitely gives them a guideline as to when couples do come in. Because I know you all probably do a lot of counseling and
Yes.
Yes.
encouragement and have heard and seen a
Right.
lot, I'm sure.
Right, yes.
So how to handle certain situations.
Yes.
But you also, doesn't it help you to learn how to operate in your calling, in your ministry? Does the manual help in that area also?
Yes. The manual came about through our experiences. A lot of times we were being called upon and individuals have sought us out for assistance. And we were not necessarily looking at being pastors. We're not looking at being ordained as ministers or whatever. We're just, just doing the will of the Father. And also understanding what our purposes are, as a man, as a woman, as a husband and a wife. And I believe that many times that your gift will make room for you. Individuals will begin to recognize your gift and before you recognize it. And so that's primarily what taking place. So individuals are seeing an oil that was upon our lives, through the crushing process. Oil does not come forth until there's been a process to pressure or to press out the oil.
Yes.
And so if you stay in the mix and stay in the battle, then you will see on the dark side of the mountain side where God is really doing the most work. And when you come forth, now you have a testimony and you have some experiences with God. You have some experiences with each other. You have some experiences because it basically sensitizes you spiritually, but it also helps you to grow in areas that you would not have grown without those different experiences. And so as a result of that, then the manual basically came forth. And once we have gotten ordained, it wasn't something that we were expecting.
Right.
In fact, that was something that our senior leaders recognized what we were doing in the house of the Lord is about serving his people and then also helping them experience the other side of what God desires. Many times when you are in a situation, you cannot necessarily see your way through
Amen.
it because sometimes you need someone else to help identify,
Right.
what the pressure points are. So to give you some tools, give you some strength, give you some wisdom, give you some knowledge, some understanding so that you can press through and also get on the other side and help others.
Well, now, okay, do you talk about your bad experiences too, or just your good in your manual? Is that in there? Or, and what you do with, how do you overcome the bad?
Well, it's a process. So the manual is literally how it sounds. It's a process. We take them step by step. So basically, the manual is for counselors to help couples. So there are different sections, whether we're talking about deliverance, people need freedom from hurt, wounds, scars, which can truly affect your current relationship.
Right.
If you
Right.
still have baggage from a previous relationship, whether it was a previous marriage or previous just general relationship, and now you're married,
Right.
you're going to see things crop up if it was something really traumatic. So
Yes.
the manual, the goal is to teach counselors how to walk people through using biblical principles to get people to freedom if that's the piece they need. Also, a big deal that comes up sometimes in marriage is the lack of communication. So that's another component. So it's a lot of different components in the book,
Yep.
but again, it's a step-by-step process, really training people to understand what do we really need to hone in on with this couple to help them to enrich their marriage.
So you're equipping the counselors and people there, girding them up and saying, this is how you approach the situation,
Yes.
which is also encouraging for a couple that is in need. If they're struggling with
Yes.
infidelity, if they're
Yes.
struggling with lies or communication or
sick.
child,
Yes.
then you can come in and you can feel comfortable enough to know that you're approaching a marriage ministry that they are equipped. They
Yes.
know how to handle this. Now, my quick question about the biblical perspectives, what are you seeing in marriages out there in our culture now? I mean, I feel like everything has been so
Twisted,
topsy-turvy, and
Upside
God is
down.
not in the middle of it, or it doesn't matter. You just kind of go through life, and if it doesn't work out, you divorce. I mean, Errol and I, we've been married 20 years, and we've gone through things 20 years. That's why I said I'm glad he still likes me, and I'm glad I still like him. You know,
Yes,
but the
yes.
love is there. But we
Yes.
know that when we put God in the center of our marriage, and we made an intentional effort to pray over our situations before we react. So we kind of, went that route, and God's been faithful. So my question is, what are you seeing in our community now with marriages? What are the needs?
Well,
Yes.
let me add something to that also. In the church,
And in the church?
there's just as much divorce as out here in the world. How can we help as Christians? What do we need to do?
Or what did it come? You want to go, babe?
Is it okay?
Oh, yes, great.
I think one of the things primarily that needs to be emphasized is that marriage disciples, because Jesus called us all to disciples. Discipleship is probably aspect that's something that's not necessarily promoted or perhaps developed the way that it should be.
Yes.
So we recognize what our role is as a disciple, as a man, as a woman of God. Then, of course, now we can really train up other disciples. And then recognizing the importance of marriage, the covenant of marriage. God created the marriage and everything. He created the institution of marriage. He created it good.
Yes.
He has not given man the authorized authority to redevelop or to change what he has already established.
Amen.
And so
Amen.
therefore, a marriage is between a man and a woman. And that's
Amen.
the way that the world is actually is populated, fruitful, and also that's the way the multiplication and the replenishing is developed. And it's going to come forth through the institution of marriage, establishing families, and then from the families where the community gets developed.
That's exactly right, because the family was the first institution on this face of this
Yes.
earth. The family came first, and we're under such, don't you see, such an attack
Sure.
from the enemy, but the world has just joined in with it, and a lot of our Hollywood stars, all these bigger, programs, you see all this infidelity and everything, and I think, dear God, where are we going?
It's
We need what you're
desensitized us.
doing, is what I'm
Yes,
saying. We
yes.
need that.
Yeah, and the part B to that, the question you were asking about what are we seeing?
Yes.
We're seeing, like you said, things unfortunate that you see in the world. You see
Yeah.
infidelity.
Yeah.
You see things, but you also see abuse, maybe things that happened, as I mentioned earlier, in their
Yeah.
childhood that is now affecting. So our goal is to, first of all, encourage the counselors. So when they go through this process, the counselors have to go through a piece of deliverance as well. Because
Okay.
if you're wounded, you can't help
Right,
other people,
exactly.
right? So once we get them to a place, nobody is like perfect.
Right.
That's never true. Get them to a place to really hone in on their giftings, discerning of spirits and different things to help them with couples.
Right.
And then if we happen to deal with couples that are dealing with infidelity, we got to walk them through. But the key is, what do you want? So sometimes people have never heard that, like, do you want this? Do you understand what covenant is?
Yeah.
You have to bring it back into perspective, because
Right.
people kind of just, well, he hurt me, she hurt me, and that's it.
What do you want?
What do
And
you want?
We're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about what do you want. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with the Bakers talking about marriage and what do you want with your marriage.
Right.
Welcome back to Friends and Neighbors, and we're talking to the Bakers, Darryl and Charlotte, regarding marriage and a marriage manual that is actually to edify and equip the counselor so then they can pour what they've learned into a marriage that needs help. And we were talking about what do you want? That's one of the key questions, as well as the covenant behind that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So we really start with, when we start typically with whether it's engaged, because we do minister to engaged and married couples, but we start with what is covenant. So we really walk them through what that looks like from, Genesis and biblically, what does that mean? It's because we really have to expand. It's unfortunate to really say, okay, the marriage is not the marriage day. It's beyond. It's so much beyond.
So,
we have to make sure that couples really understand that, even if they're already married, because some people have gotten lost in that whole process of, all the money they spend.
Right.
But they don't spend any time in even premarital. So that we think that's the key. But covenant is about something that's everlasting. Just like God gave us a covenant, right?
Right, right.
So we try to really bring that out to them to make sure they understand. And then we bring it back to, like we were saying, if it's someone who has a challenge, maybe with, say, for example, infidelity, what do you want? And that really, that question seems simple, but when you're in the middle of that, sometimes that is a thought-provoking thing, because you're saying, okay, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do it God's way? Do I really want to even submit myself, humble myself to the Father so that He can work on me? Not them, because someone said it's their fault. It's their fault. That finger point. No.
Yep.
Marriage is about you two becoming one. So whatever one does, it affects the other, but it still is an individual choice to say, I'm going to do it according to God's plan.
but Charlotte, listen, you know and I know that if your spouse commits adultery and hurts you so terribly bad, that can almost, a lot of times it does, it kills that love for that other person. Can you overcome that in the counseling? How? I don't understand how.
Yes. It's a simple process. However, it's so difficult for a lot of people to wrap their mind, their heart around the concept, and it's forgiveness. Forgiveness is that one key, one principle that God gave us and told us that if we do not forgive, then He will not forgive.
That's true.
And in forgiving, we're not just forgiving the other individual. People have to grapple with forgiving themselves as well.
Yes.
And a lot of times we don't necessarily look outward. We look outward more than we look inward. But if we look inward, then we can see ourselves in areas that needs to be developed, areas in which we need to be healed, areas in which we need to humble ourselves, and so that we can be able to get to the place on the other side of that unforgiveness, a place of healing, a place of wholeness, a place of strength, a place of love, and that, God can rekindle our joy, our love for one another. One of the things I do want to point out to you as well is that when we're talking and also ministering to the counselors, it's all about, we want them to understand that we are advocates for the marriage. We're not advocates for the husband nor the wife. So if it's the marriage that we're counseling, then you have to come to grips with it. And what are you willing to do to save it, to make it better, to refresh it, to renew it, to understand it, and to walk in it?
Okay, but there's I got that. But there's someone out there saying, yeah, but they've done this several times. Several times.
Yes.
They have just about killed me. I don't know if I can't, I don't think I can do this anymore. Does God want me to do this again and put
so
myself
confusing.
in this situation again? And our kids are seeing it. I mean, there's people out here going through this. What are we supposed to forgive again?
Yes, the scripture says it. 70 times 7, right?
I was just going to
Matthew
say
18.
70 times 7.
So, and I know what it sounds, it may sound very simplistic, but it still goes down to, are you willing to go through the process? So if you're the one that has offended.
Do you have to be willing, though?
You do, because it's your will that's in play. God has given us free will. So our will is always the key, is saying, I'm willing. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm willing to submit to this process. I'm willing to deal with a third party to help us, whatever that looks like. And it won't be pretty. more than likely, because like you said, the wounds, the hurts, the scars of the person that has been hurt. You know?
Right. But we only got 1 minute, and I
Sure.
want to say, what about, they've been abused. I mean,
Yes.
this person has been abused
Yes.
up one side and down the other physically.
Yes.
Still,
We got
there's
it.
Somebody out there saying,
You got it. I got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
hurt people
can't
hurt.
hit that in 1 minute, but
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, that's
Well, that's
tough.
why I encourage people
Yeah.
to go to biblically, for Bible-believing churches,
Right.
like
Yes,
the ones that you go to.
hey.
Tell me your church again.
The Life Center Church, Pastors Buddy and Mary Crum, they've been married 60 years, so they're a
Oh,
great template.
yes.
Ministry 30 years, so we go there. We're marriage ministry pastors.
That's awesome. Well, I encourage the viewers, if you're
Yes.
needing someone, go there. They've got this marriage manual that and a team of counselors that are equipped to be able to help
And
you.
remember forgiveness. That's the key
Forgiveness.
thing.
And be
Jesus
willing.
in your life,
And be willing.
in your marriage.
That's
Amen.
right. That's right.
Forgiveness.
Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
And thank
That
you
was
for joining
awesome.
us.
Yes.
Yes.